Okay, so yesterday morning I talked a little bit about non-violence, and I think there's a few more things I'd like to say about that. So I think everybody wants peace, not just outer peace, but also inner peace. Inner peace is like outer peace, it's about feeling safe and secure, but it's actually when the mind is no longer disturbed. If the mind is not disturbed, then outer peace can also come. But if the mind is disturbed, then whether there's peace outside or not, we're still not happy, not comfortable. And among the enemies of inner peace are anger and fear. If you think about your own life, your own history, maybe even in the present, among the things that really disturb your mind, anger and fear are quite powerful. They're almost like, we could almost say, the main problem. I mean, they're not the only problem, but they're very critical, very strong. And I'm not completely sure, but there must be a strong connection between these two. And one way to look at that is through biology, where they find some deep instinct in the brain, conditioned by the brain, called fight or flight. Yeah, fight or flight. Is that? Can you say the Hebrew term for that? Fight or flight. It's the same. Okay, fine. So this is something biological in a way, which we're born with because of our brain. This is an instinct, or it's just almost like we don't think. It just comes pretty spontaneously in certain situations. And if you think about the animal world, where is fight or flight important? It's when they meet with another creature, probably from a different species, or maybe from their own species. For instance, there might be two males who are competitive. Those kind of situations, what they have to decide is, if I fight this one, will I win? If the decision is no, then they have to run. And if the decision is yes, then they fight. Or the other one runs. So fight or flight is on both sides. And if you think about the emotions behind that, whether it's an animal or a human, I think it's probably the same. It's fear and anger. You might say, well, the animal doesn't necessarily get angry when it fights, but it has to generate a sort of determination. When they define what is anger, it's quite extreme what they say. They say anger is the wish to destroy the other. Anger is the wish to destroy the other. And certainly in the animal world, that's how it is. But think about the human world too. When we really get angry, I mean, people say, oh, I could have killed her, I could have killed him. It's like, it's just a wish to either kill them or at least get them so far away that they don't trouble you anymore. This is when the anger is very powerful, yeah? So the Buddha taught the antidote to this. Non-violence. And this doesn't come easily because the biology is driving us to the fight or flight. It's not like, some sort of idea in our mind. Oh, should I fight or should I run? Maybe I'll do this. It's not like that. It's just instinct. It just comes without thinking. You know, this fear and anger is something very powerful for politicians. It's something that they use to manipulate the people who they want to elect them. And this is happening all over the world. You see, fight or flight is in relation to an opponent. And if you can generate an opponent, and then in your population you can generate either fear or anger or a mixture of both, it's one way to achieve power. And nowadays we have, in many parts of the world, we have these so-called populists. They don't really have their own sort of platform, except they want power. And so what they do is they create an enemy. I mean, maybe there is some problem with some external force, but they then exaggerate it. So as you probably know, in Britain we had this thing with Brexit, which is causing us so much trouble. But the way that they won is they created an enemy of the European Union, which actually has really been so much benefit to the UK. But they managed to create the feeling in the population that it's an enemy, and they did it through a mixture of anger and fear. And of course, the other thing that the populists usually have is a lot of money. So they had one millionaire who gave £12 million to their campaign, and so they could produce a lot of propaganda. And they won the vote. And we can see this in other parts of the world, can't we? Like Trump created the Mexicans. That was one of the you know, they are, what he said, terrible things he said. They're contaminating our society, and really awful things he said about those. They're rapists, I think he said. They're all rapists. Infesting America. These are good people. They just want a decent life. Okay. We've got in India, we've got the BJP in power, Modi. They demonize the Muslims. In Myanmar, they created a demon of the Rohingya, and you know, they come there, they burn their villages, they rape the women, they throw the babies on the fire, and then everybody left. So now they achieved their goal. Maybe 700,000 Rohingya left Myanmar, and they're living in this terrible camps in Bangladesh. And this is through anger and fear. In the case of Myanmar, I'm sorry to say, what they used is to say, these people are degrading our Buddhist culture. The president of Tibet told us a couple of days ago in Jerusalem at a meeting, His Holiness said, if Buddhists use violence, they are not Buddhists. If Buddhists use violence, they are not Buddhists. So, from a Buddhist point of view, that is definitely, there's nothing to do with Buddhism, but they are doing it in the name of Buddhism. It's awful. Take Putin. I'm going around the world now, but who is the demon for Putin? Europe and America mainly. They want to, you know, do this and that to Russia. That's the main story. And he's so popular, very successful in creating this feeling. It's not me, I'm not the problem. I'm your savior. I'm your protector. I'm the strong man. So this is the story. And in the population, there's a mixture of anger and fear, which is generated. So Buddha taught methods for dealing with this, and that's really what we're here for, is to learn the Dharma. And I mention these political things because I think it's very important now, especially increasingly, that when we understand Dharma, we understand it's not just our private little shrine room where I sit and meditate and, attain my little nirvana. We're thinking about the whole world. We're in a situation now where the Dharma has got a very important role in our world. And I'm emphasizing non-violence because I think it summarizes what the Dharma brings to the table. Because most other philosophies, religions, ideologies, they don't mind using violence because they are partial. That's one reason. They're willing to use violence to protect our people against them. But as I said yesterday, the Buddha taught there is no us and them. It's all us. It's all us. We are all in the same boat. Or as Bernie Sanders said in the previous election race in America, my spirituality is that we are all in this together. And Bernie Sanders is against all divisions. He's against all racism. He's against all divisions on the grounds of anything, sexuality, inequality of wealth, all those things. For me, he's a great sort of example for us. And he speaks very strongly. My spirituality is that we are all in this together. Now, when you think like that, you can make it as big as possible. It doesn't even just have to be humans. Just think of all the species of animals which are really in danger now because of the way that the humans are polluting the oceans and destroying the forests, and so many different things happened in our time to degrade the habitats of the other species on this planet, that's going to come back to us. Well, it already is. That causes us so much trouble. There's one story from the time of Buddha about a man called Angulimala. His name, Angulimala, means finger necklace. His teacher, who was a really, what shall I say, he was a false teacher. He told him, you have to kill 1,000 people and you have to make a necklace with one finger from each person. And when it's completed, you will be liberated. I know it sounds crazy. You think, how could somebody believe that? But you just look at the teachings of the people who did the 9/11 atrocity, or similar. They believed that if they do this, it will create such merit for them that they will be born in infinite paradise, surrounded by lots of attractive young women. They believe that. I know it sounds stupid, doesn't it? Who would believe such a story? But it seems that they really believe that. I can't say all suicide bombers really believe it, but in general, why would you kill yourself unless you think there's some benefit? Not just, you might say, oh, it benefits what I believe in, but I think quite often they've got this kind of silly idea from their teachers. Their teachers give them so much message. You will go to paradise, you do this. This is false teaching. So Angulimala had 999 fingers, and he needed the 1,000th. And then he saw the Buddha. And the Buddha was just walking. And Angulimala thought, right, this is the one. This is my 1,000. So he came to kill the Buddha. And the Buddha just very slowly kept walking. But Angulimala experienced that as very fast. He kept running very, very fast. He couldn't catch the Buddha. It's some kind of maybe some power of the Buddha to create that illusion in Angulimala's mind. So Angulimala was very frustrated. I imagine he's getting more and more angry that he couldn't catch the Buddha to kill him and cut the finger. So eventually he stopped, and they spoke, and the Buddha explained, the Dharma of non-violence, and then Angulimala's mind changed. And actually, Angulimala then became a monk, following the Buddha, and even though he did all those very negative things of killing 999 people, nevertheless he purified all the bad karma, and I think he became arhat in that very life, the same life. And this story has many meanings, but one meaning is that even if we did many bad things, then we can purify and we can achieve liberation and even enlightenment in that life. Another story of that is Milarepa, who killed 35 people when he was young through black magic. And then he later became enlightened in that very life. Now, this is something extraordinary, that somebody's mind can change from very violent, full of anger, into non-violent. That is something sort of extraordinary. But it happens. It happens over and over and over. We have examples of terrorists who realized that was wrong. We have examples of racist skinheads who used to go around, sort of even killing people of a different race. And then they realize that was wrong, and then they change, and then they start, trying to change the minds of others because they realize it's a mistake. There's even stories of complete societies transforming. And one of these is India. India became the big country of India in the 4th century before the Common Era. 4th? No, 3rd century before the Common Era. The Emperor Ashoka became the first emperor of India. He united the kingdom through many very, very bloody wars. He was one of the most violent, aggressive rulers in the world. There's one Indian movie about that, and it's pretty horrible. But in the Indian movie, at the end, on the battlefield of his final battle, when he conquered all his enemies, he walks and he sees the suffering created, and his mind turns from anger, violence, hatred, to compassion. And so Ashoka went through a complete conversion, and he became a Buddhist. He was a bodhisattva. He created not only a unified state, but also he erected many pillars with these edicts of how his subjects should behave, and those exist still today, many of them. And they show somebody almost like a socialist. He's creating a society which is really for the benefit of the people, to create a good life, a harmonious kingdom. Really positive. And even today, even with many problems in India, which there are now, nevertheless, relatively speaking, there is peace between the different religions and the different communities. There are exceptions like Kashmir, but in general, it's not like a huge war all the time. There's a sense that we should allow different religions, different nationalities, there's different races. I don't know how many languages there are in India, but I think it's several hundred. There's so many different cultures in one country, and they're all based in the same state. We have some issues? Everything all right? Okay. Okay. That's all right. Okay, so Ashoka transformed himself, and then he transformed his kingdom. In other words, it's not just individuals who can change, It is entire countries. There's another very good example with the Mongolians and the Tibetans. As you know, the Mongolians were the most bloody people on the planet at a certain time. If a city refused to surrender to them, they just went in and they slaughtered every man, woman and child in the city. They didn't think twice, and then they continued to the next city. So the Mongolians were terribly violent people. Then, from Tibet, came a small monk called Sakyapandita, and he converted the Khan. I can't remember which Khan it was, maybe somebody knows. Converted him to Buddhism. And then the law came out not to kill anybody. Also the third Dalai Lama also went to Mongolia. Mongolians caused a lot of trouble in Tibet. They invaded Tibet many times, and they also divided Tibet, so they would side with one group of Tibetans against another group and all this kind of thing. So the history of Tibet is not peaceful, actually, even though they had these great teachers and lamas. Is everything okay?
I think he's locked out.
Somebody's locked out? Okay. Ah, right, okay. So maybe we can... Okay. Okay, I'll just keep going anyway. I mean, if you can possibly keep concentration, it may be difficult, but anyway, let's go. So Mongolia also is an example of a society which was transformed to a non-violent culture. Now today the world is in danger again. I mean, you know, we have all this kind of talk about world war and nuclear war and all these kind of things, and so it's a difficult time. So we really need this teaching of non-violence. And I think, personally, I think His Holiness Dalai Lama is the most important sort of teacher of our time of non-violence. And even like in the story of Shambhala, which I'm sure some of you know, where the kingdom of Shambhala is attacked and the king of Shambhala rides out, and they have 1,000 years on this planet of Shambhala, a golden age of peace and harmony and Dharma. And actually, in my opinion, His Holiness Dalai Lama is a little bit like the king of Shambhala. His kingdom was attacked by the Chinese, and since he came out, what has he been doing? He's been going all over the world, spreading the message of peace, non-violence, and of course many other things. But he's been bringing the Dharma to the whole world since leaving in 1959. So we're talking, 60 years or something like that. And what he achieved in that time is absolutely extraordinary. You know, many people really shifted, individuals, but also I think there's some shift in a cultural sense in the world towards that. But of course, there's the opposite direction is also continuing. So we're in a time of, you know, we got sort of light and dark simultaneously. So one nice thing, I think maybe, I can't remember if I mentioned it yesterday, but there's been this sort of attempt to get a message from His Holiness, a video message for the alternative commemoration of 1948, which you all know about. And Combatants for Peace, the Israeli organization and Palestinian organization, working together with Shantideva Study Group, on 3 occasions now, to try to get a video message from His Holiness for the alternative commemoration. So 2 days ago in East Jerusalem, in this small meeting I mentioned yesterday, the president of Tibet said, you want a video? I can get it. And so they said, oh, well, yes, great. This has been a lot of effort to get there, actually, Geshe Tenzin Zopa came to Bet Jala, and then Dagri Rinpoche went to Bet Jala, and people talking and making a video to send back. Some of you will have seen those videos that were made by Nitsan from this group. And those videos went to His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and presumably people in the private office of His Holiness. And now the President of Tibet is here in Israel. And he said, yes, I can get the video. I mean, he kind of said it like, it's not difficult for me to achieve that. And so they asked, could we have it please 1 month before? And that means it could be, draw many people to this event, which, from what I hear, is quite a positive event, although it might be a little controversial with some people. But from a Dharma point of view, anything which promotes non-violence and peace, especially non-violence. I mean, just think of the karma of encouraging people to non-violence. The merit of that is really strong. And it's even stronger in a situation where violence is almost the norm. Where violence is so regular that people, they just switch off the TV. Because it's just like, what can we do? There's a feeling, what can we do? So we just have to kind of close our mind to that. And actually, I'm not just talking about Israel, I'm talking about the whole world. The whole world is kind of burnt out with images of violence. And everywhere there's a feeling of powerlessness. We can't do anything. But if we take these examples that are given, Angulimala, Emperor Ashoka, the Mongolians, it is possible to transform. And this is why I say Dharma is very powerful. Because in those examples, it was Dharma really coming to create a sense of compassion in the mind of the aggressor, the one who was, warlike, the one who wanted to be violent. Then something changed. And then if that person is in a powerful position, or maybe it's a government or whatever, things can change. Policies change. We feel, it'll never change. It can change. But we can't see exactly how it will change or when it will change. But what we can do is contribute something towards the transformation that we want to see. What is it, Gandhi? Be the change you want to see. Something like that, isn't it? Be the change you want to see. So that is what Dharma practice is. The change we want to see is inner and outer peace, harmony, happiness, sharing, everybody to have sufficient, those kind of things. A culture of generosity, a culture of non-violence. Wow, imagine. So be the change you want to see means we ourselves transform our own anger and fear. I mean, we all have that. To transcend your biology is not easy, but it is possible. The Dharma teaches how. Through study, through reflection, and through meditation. Through the three processes, study, reflection, and meditation, comes the Dharma wisdom and the transformation of the mind. And when we are like that, there's no way that we can even rejoice in the violent actions of others, even if it looks like they're protecting us. We still feel sad for those who suffer. And we even feel sad for those who fire the gun, because they're creating cause of future suffering. So you can feel compassion for both sides in any conflict. You don't just feel sad for the one who's being a victim. You also feel sad for the one who's doing the oppressing. Everybody in a conflict is creating a situation which is awful. Okay. So this text we're studying, commentaries on Boddhichita. Yesterday we studied quite a few verses, and today we're going to finish the text. And it's page 11, and we reached verse 100. I'll read like yesterday, I'll read the verse and then I'll say a few words about it. And then also I'll allow some time for discussion as well before the break. The omniscient ones taught the powers of retention, the bodhisattva levels, and the perfection of the Buddhas to be aspects of the awakening mind. I'll just say again, we discussed it a lot yesterday, the awakening mind is the mind of somebody we call a bodhisattva, who wishes to become completely enlightened in order to benefit all sentient beings. That is called the awakening mind. In Sanskrit, Boddhichita. Bodhi means awakening or enlightenment, chitta means mind. And the awakening mind has many aspects, but here 3 are mentioned. And the omniscient ones taught means the Buddhas taught it. Buddhas are omniscient in that they see all. Omniscient means to know, actually, omniscient literally means to know all, or know everything. So the Buddhas know all the conventional things, like what's happening here, or what causes this, or what is the result of that. They know all those things, including all the details of karma, which an ordinary person like us cannot see. They know that, they can see this kind of action will produce this kind of result, and so forth. They also know the mind of each sentient being, like oneself. They know what is our stage in the spiritual path and what will benefit us at this time. At any moment they know what will benefit us. They also know all the teachings, which is like all the medicine that can help all the sentient beings, and they know which medicine to give to which particular being, like a good doctor. And if you think that is impossible, the reason why you think it is impossible, because we think that knowing is something conceptual. But in the case of the Buddhas, their knowledge is totally non-conceptual. That is something we can't even imagine. It's beyond imagination. But we should be able to imagine it because some of our knowledge is also non-conceptual. We have intuitive understanding of certain things. Intuitive means we don't have to think to know it. Just think about your own mind, your own experience. Sometimes you just know things. It's called clairvoyance. Once somebody asked Lama Zopa Rinpoche, "Rinpoche, what's it like to be clairvoyant?" He said, "I don't know if I'm clairvoyant, but sometimes I just know things." I suspect that some of you sometimes just know things. It means the way that you know that is not through the ordinary kind of thinking, conceptual mind. The knowledge just comes to you spontaneously. Some people don't have that experience, so if you don't have it, don't worry. Your mind has the potential for that, and in future you will have that experience. It comes through a certain degree of meditative realization, and for many people that happened in a previous life. So you may not be a great meditator now, but you might have that capacity. I'm sure that if you don't have it, you probably met some people who have that ability. Now in the case of the Buddhas, all their knowledge is like that. That's really amazing. They don't have any conceptual knowledge at all. Everything they know and communicate is spontaneous. They don't make any effort. So what is it that brings the teachings? Is the need of the one being taught. The Buddhas never plan what to say or what to do. Like even when Buddha was teaching Angulimala, the Buddha didn't think about what am I going to, oh, there's this guy coming. He's a big murderer. What shall I do? Oh, I'll pretend to walk slowly, but actually I'm going to walk fast. No, it wasn't anything like that. It just happened spontaneously for the help of Angulimala. And the Buddhas manifest this kind of teaching without thinking, okay, because they have that capacity. Now, in our case, right now, we are just babies in the path, but our mind is capable of that. It just needs practice. Anybody like to say anything about this? Yes.
No, I would like to ask you, could you please give an example? You said that sometimes the knowledge comes just spontaneous.
Yeah.
Without.
Yeah, okay.
So could you give any example how it's?
Yeah. I give two examples from our teacher, Geshe Wangchen. Once somebody went to see him, and after they saw him in his room, they went downstairs to where some other people were, and they said, oh, I've just been to see Geshe Wangchen. I would really like to have a photograph of him. Do you have any photograph that I could buy from you, or you could give me? And they looked, and they just couldn't find anything. And then suddenly Geshe Wangchen came downstairs, opened the door, and said, he gave the photo. Okay? Another example, we had we're going to do some puja later. It's called Lama Chöpa. We did a Lama Chöpa puja in London with Geshe Wangchen. And my mother came, which is quite unusual, because my mother wasn't really a Buddhist, but she did like Geshe Wangchen. He came to tea once, and after that she came to me and said in my ear, if I had a guru like that, I would be a Buddhist. It was very sweet. But anyway, she came to the Lama Chöpa, and it was in winter, which in England is pretty cold, and her feet were getting very, very cold. But anyway, she sat there. She thought, I must stay. Afterwards, I said to her, would you like to go and speak to Geshe Wangchen, La? Oh yes, I would like to. So she went up to his room, she sat down, and he went up to some shelf and started fishing, finding. And then he came with a great big pair of woolly socks. He said, this is for you. Those are two examples of, how did he know that? He just knew.
Just intuition or no? It's related to intuition?
Yeah, of course. She never told him I had cold feet. And the person never said to him, I want a photograph. So how did he know? So to me, it's an example like Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, sometimes I just know. I think Geshe Wangchen just knew about those things. And I'm sure many of you have met lamas, and you must have many stories of those things. So maybe in the break you can share some more stories, because they really inspire you when you hear those stories. There are many, many, many stories about many lamas. It's not, in Tibet it's not unusual, frankly. Even in the environment. They had a big lake in Tibet. And Geshe Wangchen said sometimes, they would go there and it was like watching TV. They would sit on the hill by the lake, and in the surface of the lake people would see visions about the future, or about something in their life which they can't see. So they would just go there, they would recite some prayers, and then they'd just sit. And then after a while some visions came, telling them something. And this lake was blessed by the second Dalai Lama, and it's connected to Palden Lamo, who is the protector of Tibet. And it's called Lama Latsoi. I would love to go there, but some people said that it's lost its power now, but I'm sure it could come back. They had many things in the landscape in Tibet like that also. And that's because of the practitioners, because they created some capacity to go beyond our normal reality of gross material, gross thought, conceptual thought. This is called subtle dependent origination. It operates at a deeper level. It's like karma. We can't see how karma works, but something happens. Yeah? These things are working at a deeper level. Probably it's something like quantum level. Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, one day scientists will discover karma, and then everybody will believe it. That's a very, very nice idea. When the scientists discover karma, everybody will believe it. So how will they discover it? Because it's a force. Scientists discovered many forces in the last 100 years which they didn't know before. I don't know all the names, but things like nuclear force, electromagnetic, or they know more about gravity now. There's different forces in the universe. Well, one of the main forces is karma. What makes us be born in this particular incarnation? It's karma. That's why we're here in this room even. But why we were born in this body, in this place, with this set of circumstances? It's karma. I mean, of course there are external causes too, but the personal cause why I am in that situation, that's the big question. Sometimes you think, why do I have this terrible luck? Or, why do I have this good fortune? You know, it can go both ways. Well, it's karma. Karma means previous action. In a previous life, we did something good or bad which brought about this good or bad experience. It's a cause and effect, but it's subtle dependent origination, subtle cause and effect, because you can't see it. Even so far, the scientists didn't discover it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That's one point. Very important. Like the mind. The scientists don't even know what the mind is. They think the mind is some neural interaction. No, that's the instrument of the mind. That is the mind's machine or technology. The actual mind is something non-physical. The mind is non-physical, and it influences the quantum particles, how they behave.
Today we have a new science in genetics which is called epigenetics. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I've heard the name, but I don't know what it is.
It means that if you think differently
Yeah.
in life, you have an impact on your genome.
All right.
That means that your next generation
Yes.
will think
Differently.
better,
Ah.
and so on and so on.
Wow.
Impact on
Yeah.
your genetic
Yeah.
potential
Yeah.
by having a different way of thinking.
Okay.
Medicine Buddha.
So this is very nice to know, and if the scientists are discovering it, then it has some authority in our ordinary world, and that means we have some motivation to change our way of thinking, because if we don't, the world has had it. So we need to have a change of attitude in many, many ways.
This is why the Dalai Lama, His Holiness, when the first time that he came here,
Yes.
he already said that the best solution for anything would be to make a
Dialogue.
to learn school,
Yes.
even for children.
Yes.
Our dialogue should be
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, there are vases, by the way, there are vases of peace that have been planted in different places.
Yeah. Okay.
Came from India.
Right. Okay. Let me just finish this verse, and then we can have a break in a minute. So the omniscient one, that was all about omniscience, wasn't it? The omniscient one's taught the following aspects of the awakening mind. First of all, retention. Retention is how to hold the awakening mind when you generate it and not lose it. There are various ways to keep it pure. You have to remember it each morning and evening, for example. But there's other powers which you can find in the teachings. It's called the powers of retention, and you can even help to retain it from one life to the next. That would be very good. If we develop an altruistic attitude in this life, we don't want next life to be suddenly very selfish again. So the powers of retention, very important. Then the bodhisattva levels. This is actually quite advanced. After you already had full concentration, shamatha, and you were able to realize emptiness directly, and you have uncontrived bodhicitta, that's without having to manufacture it, it's just becoming natural. Then gradually you go through 10 different levels, or bhumis, called the Bodhisattva levels. And as you go through them, your mind becomes more and more pure. There are less and less obscurations in your mind, and you can gradually understand more and more widely what are the needs of other sentient beings. So, as I said earlier, it seems impossible, omniscience, when we first hear about it. One of the problems is because it's conceptual, but also it's so vast. So the Bodhisattva levels, it begins with a certain level, and then wider, and then wider, and wider, until eventually all sentient beings are within our knowledge, within our awareness, just naturally. So this mind, which is currently quite dirty, in a way, I say dirt, I mean it's just covered with what we call obscurations. It means what we see is very limited. All we need to do is clean it up. We just polish it. Or maybe sometimes we need to sort of scrape away the dirt and gradually clean it. And this is what the Dharma practice is. It's just a way to clean or purify our mind. And there are many methods to do that. So there's different methods that suit different people, which is mentioned in the next verse. Criticism is mistaken, which says that those who constantly fulfill others' welfare through their body, speech and mind in this way and advocate the dialect of emptiness... Oh no, that's a different verse. Sorry, we'll leave that till after break. So the powers of retention, the bodhisattva levels and the perfection of the Buddhas are aspects of the awakening mind. So in other words, let's just try and summarize. Each of us has a mind. At the moment, the mind is very limited. Quite a lot of selfishness, some negative attitudes, some anger, fear, jealousy, hatred, pride, these things we sometimes say defilements or obscurations. But when we practice, when we develop bodhicitta through study and then thinking about it and then meditation, we start to change. Then, if we have the power of retention, we can hold this bodhicitta. We can guard it and keep it. Otherwise, we just keep losing it because the selfishness gets strong again. Okay? We can all recognize that. Sometimes our mind is very altruistic, and then another day we're completely self-centered because of something that happened. If we have the power of retention, we hold it. Then, eventually, we develop the bodhicitta that comes without fabrication. We have the concentrated mind, like we did earlier, shamatha, but most of us, I'm sure, are still very distracted. Eventually, there's no distraction at all. There's no laxity. There's just very clean, clear meditation. Then, realizing emptiness means to know the ultimate truth directly, without concept, just direct knowledge of emptiness. Then, after that, the bodhisattva levels. I mean, it looks like it's going up, but in another way it's going down. It's going deeper, 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 deeper. Until finally we reach perfect awakening, which is full enlightenment. Okay? And the awakening mind is slowly awakening. It's going through this process. And all of you are already beginning to awaken. It's not like you are completely asleep. Every one of you is already on the path. You're in the direction. You're already practicing in your own way, whatever it is. So rejoice. It's so positive. And it's so worthwhile. And it can contribute so much, not just to oneself, actually to the whole world. Okay, so now we stop for break for half an hour. It's 11:15. We come back at 11:45. Thank you very much.